Yeah, and I mean, also, though, even in those areas of American society that aren't regulated by commercial broadcast codes, the FCC, these sorts of regulatory bodies, like the internet, for example, like comedians. I could give you a long list of comedians in the last 10 years who were cashiered for all sorts of reasons, who were canceled, who were driven off of the stage because they said something that was a bit too edgy. Shane Gillis, Roseanne Barr, all sorts of people like that. And so this just seems like incredible hypocrisy that they don't want their own rules to apply to them.
They don't. They were fine when Roseanne Barr got canceled. They're fine when everybody. I got canceled. I got fired from CBS for some of the same things we're talking about here, for essentially just being a Republican and not always being anti-Trump. So yeah, that's why I say they lack credibility. But I think there's a difference, James. Look, a lot of Republicans today said, look, it was okay for Disney to fire the Walt Disney Corporation owns ABC, which owns the show. It's okay for him to fire Kimmel. That's absolutely right. It just is. If ABC makes the corporate decision, our ABC, not yours, that what he says does not represent their brand well, they have the right to fire him, just like CBS had the right to fire me. I didn't like it, and I'm sure Jimmy Kimmel doesn't like it, but it's not illegal. And I want to know where all the Democrats were who are now claiming it's a free speech violation for Disney to do this when I got fired for the same reason.
Well, exactly right, Mick. And I mean, you talk about your ABC versus our ABC. I'll bet our ABC tries to give Jimmy Kimmel a gig. But, this whole idea, too, that Donald Trump somehow is introducing this fascist, anti-free speech kind of, environment, so on. Well, I just found this clip from Kamala Harris, who could have been the next president, the current president of the United States. And not too long ago, she was calling for censorship, even more censorship of her own. Have a listen to this.
We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable.
And we all remember the way the Biden administration worked with social media companies to censor what people could say. I mean, the idea that somehow Trump is an outlier on this seems pretty laughable.
What I heard there, if you distill it all down, was what she said is this. That if you traffic in misinformation, we are going to hold you accountable. That's exactly what just happened to Jimmy Kimmel. So I don't know what Kamala Harris is so upset about. Look, the difference is this. We all know what the difference is. I mean, you might as well say it out loud. When she says if you traffic in hate, that means if you support Republican ideas. That's what it means. It's code for being Republican. So that's why I say, look, I want to have a debate about free speech in the country. And if this allows us to do it, that's great. Okay, I'm a huge civil libertarian. I just
Me too.
am. But I won't sit and listen to Democrats who think that it's okay to do it to me, but not okay to do it to them. That you lose credibility in the debate when you have that. And I'm looking for some Democrats who are defending Republicans when they were being canceled, and they're sort of hard to find right now.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you, too, about this big trip to the UK. The President and First Lady have been in the UK for a state visit, welcomed by the royal family, and lots of pomp and pageantry at Windsor Castle. Look, personally, I think it's pretty amazing for a guy who was driving a garbage truck just 11 months ago to now be being received in Windsor Castle. But seriously, though, big state banquet here. What do you make of this trip? Why has Trump put so much attention? This is his second state visit over to the UK in nearly as many months. What is all coming out of this between the U.S. and the UK and Keir Starmer and Donald Trump?
I think Keir Starmer and Donald Trump get along fine, which just goes to show you, by the way, that if Donald Trump doesn't get along with Anthony Albanese, it's not because of Albanese's politics. It's his personality. Trump doesn't care about your politics. I mean, he wants to do business with people that he likes, and he likes Keir Starmer. I think they've just announced here in the last couple of hours an initiative, a joint initiative between the two countries on artificial intelligence. I'll be looking for more of that in the next coming days, what actually comes out of this meeting. But one of the reasons I thought it was so successful is just that it's very similar to the U.S. and Australia. There are cultural similarities. There's ties here. It's almost like family. And for some reason, the UK has been able to sort of tap into that, and the Albanese government has not, to its own detriment, and that's a shame.
Absolutely right, Mick. Hey, finally, just one more thing for you here. I noticed a story about the thing that they say never happens, yet seems to keep on happening. A man in South Texas has been put into police custody accused of running an illegal ballot harvesting scheme. Now, all allegations at this stage, but it involved over 65 voters, and it runs a bit counter the narrative that all of these sorts of, mail-in ballots and other sorts of ways to vote rather than just going to a polling booth, are all perfectly safe. What do you reckon? You've been around elections a fair bit.
Yeah, in fact, I harken back. I think you and I may have talked about this a couple of months back when the Minnesota Democrats had their primary
Yes.
at a convention, and then the next day, the guy that lost claimed there was fraudulent, ballot interference and so forth. So, look, when they know it exists.
Yeah.
The bottom line is this: it does happen in this country. It's not an issue, I don't think, James, of people voting 3 and 4 times. I really don't think that happens that often. But ballot harvesting is real, and it is illegal in most places, including Texas. By the way, there are some states where it's not illegal, and in some states it wasn't illegal during COVID. It was a one-off type of situation. But look, there are thousands of lawyers in this country who make a living doing nothing but election law. Elections have consequences and elections have complications, and they're never, ever going to be perfect. We voted, I think, almost 150 million people here in the last election. The election is run mostly by volunteers. There's always going to be fraud, and we're always going to be able to do better next time. And I hope stories like this convince both sides that we need to focus on that.
Amen. Mick Mulvaney, thank you so much for your time this week, and we'll see you next time.